Reza Aslan, Bill Maher's not very sophisticated, professor from UC
Maher,
Riverside.
I've been on the show a bunch of times. He's a comedian, but frankly, when it comes to the topic of religion, he's not very sophisticated in the way that he thinks. I mean, the argument about the female genital mutilation being an Islamic problem is a perfect example of that. It's not an Islamic problem, it's an African problem.
Well, wait, because he says it's a, hold on a second, because he says it's a Muslim country problem. He says that in Somalia.
Yeah, but that's, yeah.
Okay, I don't even agree with the way that's crazy. That was a wild thing to just, is an African problem? That's, okay, what? That's a wild way to reframe it. Goddamn, okay. She's like, listen.
Yeah, and that's actually empirically, factually incorrect. It's a Central African problem. Eritrea has almost 90% female genital mutilation. It's a Christian country. Ethiopia has 75% female genital mutilation. It's a Christian country. Nowhere else in the Muslim majority states is female genital mutilation an issue. But again, this is the problem.
What's the correct framing? He should have said it was most likely a regional issue that is born out of the instability in these countries. But I get what he was trying to say. Reza Aslan is an Iranian evangelical convert.
Is that you make these facile arguments like that women are somehow mistreated in the Muslim world. Well, that's certainly true in many Muslim majority countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia. Do you know that Muslims have elected 7 women as their heads of states in those Muslim majority countries? How many women do we have as head of state in the United States?
Reza, be honest, though, for the most part, it is not.
Dude, 2014, this shit was popping, dude. Yo, you could just, I was about to say, things have not changed at all, okay? I guess, like, the language around it has changed a little bit, but, like, dude, like, look at this. Like, anyone that tries to be like, listen, here's the actual truth of the matter. This has nothing to do with Islam. And also, interpretations of religion vary from country to country. And ultimately, you have to look at fundamentalism and not religion itself. You say some shit like that in any part post 9/11. You say some shit like that ever after 9/11, and people should be like, shut the f up. Why don't you go strap yourself with a TNT vest and blow yourself up, okay? Yeah, Mr. Allahu Akbar. How about you shut your Muslimic terrorist ass up?
A free and open society for women in those states.
Well, it's not in Iran. It's not in Saudi Arabia. It certainly is in Indonesia and Malaysia. It certainly is in Bangladesh. It certainly is in Turkey. I mean, again, this is the problem, is that you're talking about a religion of 1.5 billion people, and certainly it becomes very easy to just simply paint them all with a single brush by saying, well, in Saudi Arabia, they can't drive, and so therefore that's somehow representative of Islam. It's representative of Saudi Arabia.
But
in Iran, they don't have...
I mean, I think that Bill Maher's point is that these aren't extremists. We often talk about extremists and that we should crack down on extremists. And why aren't Muslims speaking out about extremists? In Saudi Arabia, when women can't vote and they can't drive and they need permission from their husband, that's not extremists. Why aren't we talking more about what? That's not extremist. That's commonplace. Why don't we talk more about the commonplace wrongs that are happening in some of these countries?
It's extremist when compared to the rights and responsibilities of women, Muslim women around the world. It's an extremist way of dealing with it.
But it's not extremist in that. It's not extremist in that country in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Sam Harris literally said TSA shouldn't waste their time on travelers from white countries and only inspect Muslims. That's what made me drift away from these grifters. Here's old HasanAbi lore dump. Back when I was at the Young Turks, Sam Harris was at the Santa Monica Equinox. And I knew who he was because he had debated my uncle recently, but he didn't know who I was, obviously, because I was a up-and-comer at TYT. So I approached him, and I was like, oh, my God, you're Sam Harris. Big fan. I'm lying. And we had a very quick conversation about Islam at the Santa Monica Equinox that we were both working out at. Okay, quick lore dump. And in which I asked him about, like, why he places the emphasis on Islamic terror at a time when, 90 or not 95, I think at the time it was 75% of domestic terror incidents that take place on U.S. soil were actually white nationalist, far-right, anti-government extremists. Okay? I said this directly to him. I was like, the data, it shows that 75% of domestic terror incidents on U.S. soil have happened, since 9/11, have happened in the hands of white supremacists, far-right, anti-government extremists. And to which he literally turned around and said, look behind you, there's the Santa Monica Pier. Okay? If that exploded right now, who would you think was responsible? Would you think, Mormon extremists would be responsible for that? Or would you think Muslim extremists would be responsible for that? And I was shocked at how non-data driven his attitude was on this, in this conversation. Straight up. And for the record, he has personally brought that forward as a epic own many times in public as well.
Arabia, that's the norm.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
that's
it's
what
not.
she's saying.
I mean, look, Saudi Arabia.
No, my response was I would not make an inference that it's Muslim or Mormon until there was more evidence presented. But why did Sam Harris feel comfortable making this as an argument? And he has actually made this as an argument since then, right? Since that private conversation. Why? It's because when the overwhelming majority kind of agree with that statement due to the societal attitudes towards Islam as being like a singularly dangerous ideology that creates terrorists, okay, then you can get away with that sort of irrational thinking because ultimately that's just you being biased, right? That's just simply put, you being a biased person. And yet it does not matter because if enough people agree with that bias and they take that bias as though it is the truth, then it doesn't matter if you're saying something that is completely illogical. Okay? We feel comfortable saying school shooters are white people. No. Brother, did you not hear the first part of this conversation where I told Sam Harris that the overwhelming majority, 75% of domestic terror incidents on U.S. soil since 9/11 were not done by Muslims, but instead done by white supremacists, anti-government, far-right terrorists? Like, did you just erase that part of the conversation from your brain? Are you choosing not to hear that? Okay, that's my point. That's why a lot of this is a testament to transphobia and like trans-panic defenses not working all that well. Okay, there's one trans person that did a school shooting, and before then and ever since then, right-wingers keep claiming that every school shooter or every shooter really that's high profile is trans, right? Over and over and over again. It is statistically marginal. Okay, it is irrelevant. If you want to group the profile of a school shooter or a mass shooter, it's almost always a white guy, okay? With some exceptions. Having said that, however, it doesn't work when people try to say, oh, it's just, trans people that are doing it. But that hasn't stopped right-wingers from consistently claiming that it is a trans person, okay? Now, the difference is, white men specifically dominate in the field of school shootings so aggressively that, and because of the way we analyze whiteness and white people in general in a, country like the United States of America, where whiteness is a socio-political framing of power, okay, a socio-political designation that is basically just saying you're a part of the in-group. People don't automatically assume racist opinions about white people. I'm a white guy. Nobody thinks I'm a school shooter. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work in the same way. This is the difference between in-group, out-group dynamics. Those who retain power due to intrinsic qualities in a white supremacist society, you never monolithize those people. Okay? You have the capacity to understand that it's a complex and nuanced situation as to how they arrived at that position when it's a white person doing it. You never offer that same kind of nuance if it's a marginalized person doing it. You just go, that's how they are.
Arabia is one of the most, if not the most extremist Muslim country in the world. In the month that we've been talking about ISIS and their terrible actions in Iraq and Syria, Saudi Arabia, our closest ally, has beheaded 19 people. Nobody seems to care about that because Saudi Arabia sort of preserves our national interests.
Okay.
This is the problem, is that these kinds of conversations that we're having aren't really being had in any kind of legitimate way. We're not talking about women in the Muslim world. We're using 2 or 3 examples to justify a generalization. That's actually the definition of bigotry.
All right, fair enough. Let's listen to Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations today.
No way, dude. Things never change. Okay, Kaya. Kaya, okay.
So when it comes to their ultimate goals, Hamas is ISIS and ISIS is Hamas.
Guys, this is in 2014, okay? Just so you understand. This is in 2014. Oh, my Lord. This is in 2014, okay? Holy moly.
And what they share in common, all militant Islamists share in common.
So Reza, the question at the bottom of the screen that everyone is looking at. Does Islam promote violence?
Islam doesn't promote violence or peace. Islam is just a religion, and like every religion,
Dude, look at this. Does Islam promote violence? Up next on CNN. Does every Muslim want to kill every American?
in the world, it depends on what you bring to it. If you're a violent person, your Islam, your Judaism, your Christianity, your Hinduism is going to be violent. There are marauding Buddhist monks in Myanmar slaughtering women and children.
Facts.
Does Buddhism promote violence? Of course not. People are violent or peaceful, and that depends on their politics, their social world, the way that they see their communities, the way they see themselves.
So, Reza, you don't think that there's anything more... There's the justice system in Muslim countries, you don't think, is somehow more primitive or subjugates women more than in other countries?
Did you hear what you just said? You said in Muslim countries. I just told you that Indonesia, women are absolutely 100% equal to men. In Turkey, they have had more female representatives, more female heads of state in Turkey than we have in the United States.
But in Pakistan,
stop saying things like Muslim countries.
Women are still being stoned.
And that's a problem for Pakistan. You're
so in
right.
other words,
so let's criticize
I just want to be clear on what your point is, because I thought you and Bill Maher were saying the same thing. Your point is that Muslim countries are not to blame. There is nothing particular, there's no common thread in Muslim countries. You can't paint with a broad brush that somehow their justice system or Sharia law or what they're doing in terms of stoning and female mutilation is different than in other countries like Western countries.
Stoning and mutilation and those barbaric practices should be condemned and criticized by everyone. The actions of individuals and societies and countries like Iran, like Pakistan, like Saudi Arabia must be condemned because they don't belong in the 21st century. But to say Muslim countries as though Pakistan and Turkey are the same, as though Indonesia and Saudi Arabia are the same, as though somehow what is happening in the most extreme forms of these repressive countries, these autocratic countries, is representative of what's happening in every other Muslim country is frankly, and I use this word seriously, stupid. So let's stop doing it.
Here's another throwback to Ben Affleck owning Sam Harris.
And about women, about homosexuals that are deeply troubling. So these are not Islamists, they're not jihadists, but
those views are anathema to ours.
But they also keep women and homosexuals immiserated in these cultures, and we have to empower the true reformers in the Muslim world to change it. And, lying about the link between doctrine and behavior is not going to do that.
The Great Divide. The Great Divide is not between Islam and the rest. It's rather between the fundamentalists and the moderates in each faith.
Okay, but we're misled to think that the fundamentalists are the fringe. Okay, we have jihadists, Islamists, and conservatives.
Well, and by the way,
it depends hundreds of millions of people fit that description.
You're saying that the strongest voices are coming from those who are jihadists and extremists, and that represents a bigger piece of the pie than we often think is true.
There's no question.
Okay, so having said that, and even if that is true statistically or otherwise, the key thing to recognize that I don't think is part of the argument, but I think should be, is that there are voices that are oftentimes raised in opposition to these jihadists and to these extreme acts. But guess what? They don't get covered. They don't get exposed. And they're not given the same level of platform that we see the jihadists.
One reason they don't get exposed is because they're afraid to speak out, because it's the only religion that acts like the mafia that will kill you if you say the wrong thing, draw the wrong picture, or write.
Yeah, dude. Famously, the only religion that acts like the mafia and kills you is Islam. Okay? Yeah. Brother, your refusal to understand nuance in this conversation is leading you down this illogical pathway of thinking. Okay? This is why I just, I harbor a lot of resentment for Islamophobic r/atheist guys, the militant atheists. Okay? Not only historically have Christians done that, but they still continue to do that. What are we talking about? When Israel claims they're doing it for Judaism, they're also, I don't agree. I don't believe that they're doing it for Judaism, just as much as I don't believe ISIS has anything to do with Islam. Okay? But Bill Maher, on the other hand, does think that that's appropriate and good. Okay? Same with George W. Bush saying he invaded, God told him to invade Afghanistan with a ton of, very far-right Christian generals who wanted to dip their bullets in pig's blood. Okay? Do you track that as a radical Christian act? You don't. And the people that say they do are lying because they want to win that argument. Because when you live in a dominant Christian culture, you have the capacity to understand and separate fundamentalism from the acts of like the everyday average Christians. That's the difference.
Write the wrong book.
So you do have,
and there's a reason why Ayaan Hirsi Ali needs bodyguards 24/7.
You do have that element of fear as well, but you also have other braver souls out there who do speak out.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali, another grifter who's now a Christian, by the way. Christian convert, Ayaan Hirsi Ali,
and who who are risking their lives to do that.
like the Muslim clerics and others from Australia to Europe to the United States just recently publicly put their names on paper declaring their opposition to what ISIS and others are doing. So there are those voices, but where was the coverage? Where was that story to sort of create a different picture?
What is your solution? What is your ask? Just condemn Islam?
The solution,
the
solution is very much
what we've killed more Muslims than they've killed us by an awful lot. We've invaded more Muslims.
I am not for more killing.
An awful lot. And yet somehow we're exempted from these things because they're not really a reflection of what we believe in. We did by accident. That's why we invaded Iraq and put 4 million people.
We're not convincing anybody.
It's not I'm specifically telling you that I disagree with what you think.
I know, and we're obviously not convincing anybody of you.
You don't understand my argument.
Your argument is like, black people, they show each other.
That is not my argument.
No, it's not. It's based on facts. I can show you a Pew poll of Egyptians. They are not outliers in the Muslim world that say like 90% of them believe death is the appropriate response to leaving the religion. If 90% of Brazilians thought that death was the appropriate response to leaving Catholicism, you would think it was a bigger deal.
I would think it's a big deal no matter what.
Okay, but that's the fact.
But what I wouldn't do is say it's all Brazilians, or I wouldn't say, well, Ted Bundy did this. God damn, these gays, they're all trying to eat each other.
Okay, let me just give you what you want. There are hundreds of millions of Muslims who are nominal Muslims, who don't take the faith seriously, who don't want to kill apostates, who are horrified by ISIS, and we need to defend these people, prop them up, and let them reform their faith.
Dude, apostates. That was a early relic. That was an early relic of the post 9/11 Islamophobia that r/atheists always love talking about. All these Muslims want to kill apostates. Yeah, I think it's got to be because I think it came from the fact that like so many ex-Muslim people that became like r/atheism were wanted to like heighten their importance. So I think like they presented their worldview as like, no, every single Muslim will like immediately kill you if you leave the religion. I think that's what it is. Like, because I don't know where the this came from. And I know people will say, it's the religion, sweetie. It's like, no, that's not really like, that's not really a commonly shared opinion. Yeah, see, Turks in the chat saying that they're embarrassed, but they did that as well. A lot of r/atheists like Turks and former Muslims or people who grew up in Muslim countries that don't like Islam oftentimes play this very formative role in shaping people's understanding of it, not realizing that it like, contributes to their own personal dehumanization. Yeonmi Parks, all of them.
ISIS couldn't fill a AA ballpark in Charleston, West Virginia, and you were making a career out of ISIS.
But no, it's not just ISIS. It's all jihadists. It's global. It's a phenomenon of global jihad.
I think that's the opposite.
There is those things. There's ISIS. There's global jihadists. The question is the degree to which you're willing to say, because I've
global jihadists, dude. What a time to be alive, dude. I mean, look, this is why I sometimes say we're back, but we're not as back as we were. You know what I mean? Do you understand? Like, things are this bad, but I don't know. Aesthetically speaking, it's not this level. Like, things are bad, but it still hasn't hit this level, I think. It will get there, though, when Trump is in office.
Witness this behavior, which we all object to on the part of these people. I'm willing to...
These people are talking about takfir, which is basically excommunication, but that phrase isn't mentioned in the Quran, nor is it supported by many Islamic scholars. It's seen as an Islamic militant thing. No, dude, you don't understand. Everyone's always killing people for leaving the religion, famously.
Flatly condemn those of you I don't know and have never met.
No,
This
it's
is
not
based
condemning
on
people. It's ideas.
And,
you got to make the
and
distinction.
people who believe in those ideas.
So it's people who believe in it.
Based on reality, Ben. We're not
action.
making it up that there is that in the Muslim world it is mainstream belief.
But this is such a caricature of Indonesia, of Malaysia,
Okay, wait a
so
minute.
much of the world. And this does have the tinge a little bit of the way white racists talk about African Americans and define blacks by.
What you're saying is
black
because
criminals,
they
which
are a
not
minority, we
representative.
shouldn't criticize.
It's not that much of a minority. It's the second biggest religion in the world.
Exactly, but you're treating them like a minority. But, I mean, if Filipinos were capturing teenagers and sending them into white slavery, we would criticize that. We wouldn't say, well, they're
criticize the
Filipinos.
people who are doing it, not the Philippines. You know what I mean?
Well, what if the people
As
who
a
are...
Filipino kid lives down the street from you would have nothing to do with that. So these are different things. Crazy
Racial
people.
stereotyping.
I think
All
it
right.
goes.
Let's talk. We mentioned ISIS. Let's talk about that.
That part was great. The greatest defender of all time, Bill Maher, against his Islamophobic tendencies will forever be, and I hate to give this to him because he's very different now, Glenn Greenwald. That Ben Affleck clip is great, but Glenn Greenwald on Bill Maher, if anyone has the clip, is a classic one. I used to play it all the time.
It's not our fault what came out. We didn't go into Egypt.
Well, we
wound
did.
up with the Muslim
We didn't go
Brotherhood.
into Egypt. We were supporting and propping up Mubarak for 30 years, even as we were cheering for all the Tahrir Square demonstrators as though we were on their side. It was our government that kept Mubarak in power, just like we've done across the entire Muslim world. And it's amazing for you to say that, well, look at all these Muslims. The minute you give them a little bit of freedom, they go wild and they start being all violent. How can you be a citizen of the United States, the country that has generated more violence and militarism in the world over the last 5 or 6 decades, and say, look at those people over there, they are incredibly violent? We play a significant role in what has been happening in the Middle East because we've been interfering and dominating that region in order to have access to the oil.
I wasn't talking about
Israel.
violence.
So,
I was talking about theocracy. That doesn't happen here.
no, well, okay, that doesn't happen here, but at the same time, Iran isn't invading lots of other countries and occupying them for a decade, nor are fundamentalist Muslim countries the way the United States is. So these things are interlinked because we are continuously interfering in that part of the world. And so to say...
Really, it's all our fault?
It's not all our fault, but when you send your military for 6 straight decades into other countries to bomb them, kill their children and women and innocent men, prop up dictators, yeah, you take responsibility for your actions and say, to the extent that that region...
That religion goes back 1,000 years before our revolution, so I don't think we can take all...
This is so unimaginably racist because Islam in its golden age literally carried water for history continuing. Islam in its golden age led to many inventions that we take for fucking granted. Islam in its golden age is the reason why so many important academic materials were preserved. So he literally automatically, with his racist ass, white supremacist ass, Islamophobic ass, unironically just goes, oh, this is 1,000 years. Like, shut the up, you stupid ass bitch. Do you enjoy math? Okay, well, you know, thank the Islamic golden age. Dumb
all the blame.
I don't think we should. I think we should take a lot of it. And there's lots of bodies and corpses that have been piled up in the name of Christianity and Judaism as well.
Not recently.
Have you heard of the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza for the last 50 years, motivated in part by extremist views of Judaism, or the wars in Europe, or the fact that there were generals in the United States saying we have to go and invade and destroy Iraq, a country of 26 million people, because our God is bigger? Lots of religions, not just Islam, produce violence.
Well, if I could just make one quick point about Egypt.
That silly liberal view that all religions are alike because it makes you feel good.
No, it makes you feel...
Dude. He cooked his ass so hard today, okay? And I will forever be understanding.
good to say our side is better. Those
No, it
people
makes
over there
you
are
feel good
primitive
to
and
put a
violent.
crown on your head and say, I'm a good person. How do I
You
prove that?
You get to ignore the responsibility that your own government has for the violence and instability in the world by saying, look, it's that primitive religion over there that's to blame.
At least there was a moment in time that I respected Glenn Greenwald. There's never been such a moment for Bill Maher. That's my point. I guess I was too young to know and appreciate his immediate takes after 9/11. So as long as I've known myself, I have despised him. His career has just been a sequence of L's downstream post that moment of moral clarity. Anyway, so